Muy buenas tardes, siendo las 17:04, les saluda el profesor Cristian Cristóful, coordinador de lengua inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas en calidad de moderador. Se da inicio a la defensa virtual de Tesina, acorde a la resolución número 1962/2024, que fija fecha y hora de la Tesina con el título Towards a Deeper Understanding of the Social Role of Women in the 1920s through a Literary Analysis from the Feminist Approach of Two Short Stories written by Catherine Mansfield, a cargo de las autoras Ana Belén Cabral Pérez y María Fernanda González Ortiz, de la carrera de Lengua Inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lengua. El día de hoy, viernes 20 de diciembre del 2024, a unos días de celebrar la Navidad. En calidad de presidente del Tribunal Examinador nos acompaña el profesor Leonardo Sandoval. Y en calidad de miembros del Tribunal Examinador, los profesores Romina Bento y Ángel Aquino. Postulantes universitarias, muy buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Bienvenidas. Ahora el profesor Sandoval va a quedar con el manejo del desarrollo de la defensa.
Muchas gracias, profesor Cristóful. Bueno, como sabrán, los postulantes tendrán 30 minutos de tiempo de exposición y luego el tribunal tendrá tiempo para formular preguntas. Así que sin más, creo que podemos comenzar con la defensa.
Okay. Let us share our screen. Good afternoon, professors, Mr. Cristóful, family and friends. We are Fernanda Gonzalez and Ana Cabral, and this is our undergraduate research dissertation titled Towards a Deeper Understanding of the Social Role of Women in the 1920s through a Literary Analysis from the Feminist Approach of Two Short Stories written by Catherine Mansfield. Why we chose this topic? First of all, we read the stories when we were at university in our literature class, and we found very intriguing the role of the women characters portrayed in these stories. Also, then we found out certain aspects of the life of the author that were kind of similar to what she was describing in her stories. And we specify the 1920s because it's a very important year or decade for feminist movement and also for women's suffragists, as well as it is one of our stories was written in the 1920s.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Our general objective is to analyze the role of women displayed in Catherine Mansfield's short stories Bliss and Miss Brill through the application of the feminist approach. The specific objectives are describe Catherine Mansfield's two short stories, Miss Brill and Bliss, with an emphasis on the role of the female character, compare Catherine Mansfield's life experiences with the main characters of the two short stories, Miss Brill and Bliss, with an emphasis on the role of women.
Provide complete information on the context and setting in which these two short stories take place, including the plot, language, and secondary characters. Review Catherine Mansfield's two short stories, Miss Brill and Bliss, from the perspective of the feminist approach.
Our research questions are: what is the role of women in Catherine Mansfield's short stories Bliss and Miss Brill? How do the author's life experiences affect and shape the female characters in Bliss and Miss Brill? What are the main issues discussed, and how can they be related to the feminist approach? Or the key terms we can find in this undergraduate project are androcentrism, alienation, biological determinism, gender, gender performativity.
gynocriticism, intersectionality, patriarchal society, proto-feminism, and sexual politics. Is there any need for us to clarify any of these terms? If not, we continue with our presentation.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. The significance of the study is to address the underexplored representation of women's experiences in the early 20th century literature. Also, because even though it has been 100 years or more in which these stories were written and what happened during this time, we still find the struggles of women to fight for equality and other aspects that are still present. And also to give an example, the fight for equality in professional aspect regarding salary. Our methodology, the approach is a qualitative and descriptive research. Our data collection consists on analysis of primary sources, which are the short stories, and the secondary sources, which are the literary criticism and historical context. The historical context plays an important role as well. Framework. The feminist literary criticism focusing on character development, narrative techniques, and thematic elements. The literary review has three areas that were developed: the historical background for the women's rights in the 1920s, the author and how her life experiences affected the writing or her writing, and the feminist approach for the concepts of gender identity and representation. The literary review of historical background, I can mention that there were three historical events that affected women's. Okay, the Civil War, the Industrial Revolution, and the World War First. Why is this important? Because during the World War First and Civil War, men were sent to fight, and the jobs were filled up by women. Women's right in the 1920s is important because our author is from New Zealand, and New Zealand was the first country to give women the right to vote in the 1883. After that, it was England, and in 1918, and England is also an important country because the author spent most of her life there. And finally, it was the 1920s in United States. Catherine Mansfield and women's rights, she did not consider herself a feminist or part of the feminist movement. She participated in some meetings and she got scared of how it turned out. And she said that she was going to participate and help the movement through her writing. So she didn't consider herself a suffragette, but she did help the feminist movement. Feminist movement, the feminist movement has three waves: the first, the second, and the third. The first wave is from the 1800s up to the 1920. And the first wave established that the women wanted to achieve equality. In the second wave, the women accepted that there were some differences, and they said that these differences should be embraced, according to the feminist movement in the second wave. And this was from the 1960s to the 1980s. And the third wave is from the 1990s, and it improved the context of debate according to equality and according to how to achieve certain rights.
Then we have the feminist approach. We have the feminist literary criticisms. And according to Stephen Lean, he stated that feminist criticism has transformed the study of literature by bringing attention to how gender and sexuality are represented. We have contributions of key feminist theories. We have Kay Millett with sexual politics, Elaine Showalter with the gynocriticism. We have Judith Butler with a gender performativity, and Rebecca Walker that she emphasized the intersectionality. Then we have our author, Catherine Mansfield. Catherine was born in New Zealand on October 14th, 1888, and her birth name was actually Caitlin, not Catherine. She came from a very well accommodated family. However, she was determined to escape from the restrictions of family, colonial life, and bourgeois social conventions. She was married to George Bowden for 9 years, but it is said that she got married to prove her heterosexuality because she liked women as well. She was also attracted to them. And but then she got divorced and got married to John Middleton Murray. The modernism. She was influenced by Oscar Wilde and Chekhov. The modernist literary movement focuses on the subconscious of the characters. The modernist writers, they were interested in the psychology and the behavior of the character. They look more in depth, right? Metaphors, symbolism, and ambiguity were commonly used. The feminism, as Anna said before, she didn't consider herself a feminist, but she said that through her writings, she can contribute more. She challenged the traditional gender roles and advocated for women's intellectual and creative freedom. The 1920 society, even though they had changed better ways for women. They had the right to vote, they could get divorced, but they still had to fulfill the society's expectations, such as getting married, had kids, and so on.
Excuse me for interrupting. The ones
Yes.
who is talking, please face the camera because we can partially see you only.
Ah,
Okay.
okay, okay.
So
No
thank
problem.
Here,
you. Thank you.
there.
Okay, so a brief summary of our analysis, the two short stories. As we mentioned, there is Miss Brill and Bliss. Miss Brill is a single woman, she's a teacher, and she doesn't fit with the societal standards. She fits in when she goes to a park every Sunday. And then on the other hand, we had Bliss, and the main character is Berta Young, and she has a perfect life. She has a house, a husband. She doesn't have to worry. Sorry, she doesn't have to worry about money, and she also has a baby. But her perfect life, as we see here, is shattered at the end by her husband's betrayal.
Okay, here we have the first short story is Miss Brill. She's a middle-aged woman who observes life in the Jardins Publiques, a park, feeling like an spectator. But she likes to go every Sunday to the Jardins Publiques is her routine. But that specific Sunday, she decides to wear her fur coat. And she's a very observant and imaginative woman. She's always eager to make conversation, but nobody talks to her. Miss Brill, she is fascinated by everything she sees and listens to at the park. But suddenly, she sees a young couple approaching her. And the girl seems to be shy by Miss Brill presence, And the boy look at Miss Brill and mocks her silly old thing, referring to the fur coat she's wearing. And this cruel remark changes the tone in the story. Later in her cupboard, she put the furs away and she thinks she hears something crying. The women's character in this story is the main character, Miss Brill. As I said before, she's a middle-aged woman. We don't know how old she is. If she is in her late 20s, in her late 30s, because according to the context of the 1920s, you have to be married by young age, right? In your 20s, you have to be married already. And she's a lonely woman who finds solace in observing others. And she also, in that moment in the park, she believes she's in a play, that she's an actress, that she's part of the world, but she's felt feeling alienated. The symbolism, we have two. We have the fur and we have the band. The fur is something that she cherishes, she loves, she takes care of, but it is also a reminder of her loneliness and her longing for companionship, her desire to be noticed and appreciated. Then we have the band, and the band actually sets the tone in the story as well, because if she's feeling happy, they play a happy tune. If she's feeling sad, they play a sad tune. And okay, the next one is the setting. We have the Jardin Publics and her room. The Jardin Publics is a place full of activity, social interaction, children running around, people meeting, but also serves as a contrast of Miss Brill's own solitary existence. While the garden is a place of activity and social interaction, Miss Brill, she's still an outsider and a spectator to the park rather than a participant. Then we have her cupboard room. Her room is a reminder of her lack of freedom and her inability to escape her current situation. The room is a physical manifestation of her loneliness and her longing for something more. We have the themes again, as I said before: loneliness, social expectations, and the invisibility of women. As from the feminist perspective, we have the critique of social norms and the objectification of women. Again, we go back to loneliness, social expectations, and the invisibility of women. So here we have the gender roles and the expectations. She embodies the female identity in a world that often alienates older women. As I said, in that context, we don't know if she's in her late 20s or late 30s. And Tori Moa discusses the alienation in society, how not only older women are treated, but women itself, how they are alienated by the patriarchal society. Murray and Butler explore as well these societal expectations. Remember, she's a single woman, she's old, she didn't get married, she doesn't have kids. It's everything the society at that time expects, but not only that time, still in 2024, right? And again, the objectification of women, how women had to fit in a social standard. You have to be young, you have to be pretty. And that's it.
Okay. For Bliss, as I previously mentioned, Berta Young is the main character and she has a perfect life. But at the end, there is an open ending. She sees her husband uh, cheating on her with a secondary character, which is Miss Pearl Fulton. Um, Berta Young has a little baby and she loves her baby. She has a nice house, and the whole story happens in the house. The women's character, as I mentioned, Berta Young, she is full of bliss, as she mentions at the beginning of the story. And even though she's full of happiness with what she has, there is still some quest for adrenaline in her life. And then there is Miss Fulton, the woman she is attracted. Berta is attracted to Miss Fulton, or obsessed, we can say at the same time. Why? Because she keeps imagining scenarios in which she is going to kiss Miss Fulton. For the symbolism, we have two objects, same as in Miss Brill, the pear tree and the rare fiddle. The pear tree is in her garden, her beautiful garden, and the pear is usually compared with a body of a woman. Again, here we can see the obsession towards Miss Fulton, and the author um, hints of her bisexuality or lesbianism. Um, then we have the rare fiddle. In this case, Catherine Mansfield, when the story is mentioned, the rare fiddle is talking about Berta's baby. Berta is complaining that she has a baby, but she cannot take care of her baby. She is not in charge of raising the baby because she has a nurse, a nanny for that. And that's what the society imposed to people like her, a married woman, well accommodated, and having a nice house, having a husband, and a baby. It says, it's why do we have to comply with, why do we have a body if we, and why do we have a baby if we have to keep it like in a box? It's a rare fiddle. It's weird that I have to get my baby raised in another woman's arms. In this case, we can compare the author's relationship with her mother, which was very difficult. And in fact, she was not raised by her mother, she was raised by her grandmother, according to Alpers. The setting, it occurs everything in the suburban home, and the whole story starts describing the house as well. And according to Toril Moore, the house was the place of control for women. But at the same time, the house is their prison. So society imposed that Berta should be happy with her house and managing the house and having a husband and everything, but she cannot look for anything else to fulfill her happiness. She has to be okay with that. For the themes, we have illusion versus reality. As I mentioned, her obsession on how she's going to kiss Miss Fulton. She wants to kiss Miss Fulton, and she keeps imagining, am I going to wait for her to come over here when we watch the pear tree? Am I going to wait for her to give me a sign? Did she already give me the sign? The idealization of motherhood, as I previously mentioned, she wants to have a bond with her baby, but she is not allowed to. In the story, it mentions how she goes to feed her baby, and the nanny says, don't play too much with her because then I have to deal with her. Now she has to have dinner and then she has to go to bed. The nanny was in charge of the baby's routine, and Berta was a little bit rebel sometimes, trying to sneak into the baby's routine. The feminist perspective, the examination of the happiness description, and the critique of gender. As I mentioned, Toril Mo and the house was the center of power for women. But I can mention the same with Simone de Beauvoir, who talks about the patriarchal society and a patriarchal relationship, which is the slave-master relationship. In this case, the slave is the woman and the master is the husband. Then again, Berta is not actually successful. Her husband is successful. The women were not successful according to Toril Moss theory. Sorry. And taking into consideration Elaine Showalter, she talks about the women writers and the women as a reader, as readers. And we can say that Catherine Mansfield was writing these to wake up women about what else they could do. That they were not only supposed to be a housewife or a nanny only or a teacher if they were single. Um, our key findings.
Our key findings are both stories illustrate the struggles of women against societal constraints. Mansfield's characters experience profound loneliness and a quest for identity. The narratives challenge simplistic views of women's role in the 1920s. So, these analyses demonstrate the complicated manners in which women negotiate the limitation placed to them through these historical periods, capture the intense loneliness and despair that wider societal expectations felt by women in the 1920s. They are in a structure that excludes them and dismisses them. They are in a period of great sensitivity. As Bodhi stated, there are no great events such as ordinary happenings in the lives or ordinaries and the difficulties of daily existence. So Catherine Mansfield wrote about ordinary situations with ordinary people.
Yes, she was. We can say our author was ahead of her time
As well,
by
yeah.
her writing and how she portrayed these women. Also, a key finding: both women, both main characters, wanted what the other one had. Miss Brill wanted to have a family, and Berta wanted to have freedom. She wanted to be single. Our conclusion: Mansfield's works provide a nuanced understanding of women's experiences in the 1920s. As we have mentioned, all the social constraints that were imposed on women, they were either have to get married and have kids, or if they were single, they only had two options: being a teacher, being a nurse,
And be alienated
yeah,
from society.
exactly. The feminist analysis reveals the complexities of female identity and societal expectations. According to Butler, the gender performativity theory, in this case, they can be happy, but they are oppressed at the same time by societal constrictions. Recommendations of our study. Future research could be explored, like intersections of race, class, and cultural background in feminist literature. For example, authors that were Black and they had other issues to study, being a woman and an author. We have, for example, Maya Angelou with her I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. And there are many others. I can mention Alice Walker with The Color Purple. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for putting all this together. Thank you, Professor, um, as well. Mr. Valenzuela, Leonardo, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So now we have a round of questions from the examining board. So we might start with Professor Angel Aquino, please.
Sure. I'm really delighted to see you girls presenting this. Your Tessina reminds me of two female writers. One of them is Kay Chopin, Story of an Hour, and the other one is Virginia Woolf. And this really teaches me a lesson right now. It teaches me this. that from now on I should include more female writers into my introduction to living classes so that we can pretty much learn from the perspective of women. Having said this, it also reminds me of a famous short story by Virginia Woolf, and I have it here because I wrote my questions on Google Docs.
Yeah.
It is known, and you know this, girls, A Room for One's Own. I highly recommend this for each and every one of us. It was meant to be a lecture of 3 hours and 45 minutes, but she put it into writing. So every single person should write this. And she said back then, if only women had in the 20th century, in the 19th century, one room to write, she would be such a great professional. Speaking about that, I have 3 different questions. I'm going to post my questions into the chat if that is allowed, so that you have time to process the questions and you can take time to respond to them. My first question has to do with this. Let me copy this and put it into the chat, or maybe I can copy the 3 questions all together. Hold on. Copy here, go back to this place. I don't get to see. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. How has women's representation changed in the 21st century regarding literature, medicine, architecture, and other fields? And what's the role, according to you girls, in terms of what should the role of women be now? So that is my first question. Hold on. I'm going to post it so that you can process. Meanwhile, my second question has to do with the literary approaches. I'm glad you chose the feminist one, but also I'm interested in this too. So you have time to also respond to this one. Understand that you chose the feminist approach as your literary tool. Have you thought of choosing another one like the historical approach? Because you mentioned World War One, you also mentioned certain different historical events back then, and even the symbolism literary approach, because you talked about symbolism in your short stories. Why do you stick to only one approach? And my last final question, and this will be it, Professor Vento, Professor Sandoval. My last question has to do with the following. Here, I asked the same question to a librarian back in 2012 when I took a course at Michigan State University. She was a brilliant librarian, and I had the same question to her. Back then, it was such a big event to have women publish, especially books about dystopia. So do you know why most dystopian novels nowadays, like Margaret Atwood's Alias Grace and Susan Collins' Hunger Games, and even Veronica Roth's Divergent, are written by women? Most of the dystopian books nowadays are written by women. So back then, we're talking about 150 years ago or so, women couldn't even write a thing. And I want to end up with this famous quote by Virginia Woolf. She said, for most of history, Anonymous was a woman. So, ladies, take your time. Please respond as you please. So, thank you very much. I really liked your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Question one. Can you wait? Okay. There. Here. And here.
Okay, how was women representation changed in the 21st century?
I can answer that.
Okay.
Well, it changed, but not so much for question number 1. Well, first they achieved the right to have education, to be able to read and write, and after that, other that we were mentioning, like the right to work and to vote as well. Nowadays, I think this is a term that is mentioned actually the whole time, the mental burden of women.
Yeah.
Because we have to be professionals and we have to comply being either a mother or a good daughter. And that, I think it hasn't changed that much. We are still struggling with a society trying to fit in. There is always something that we need to correct or achieve.
I may add something in there. Because you're a woman, you have to handle all of those things: motherhood, work. Because either if you're a working mom, you left your kids aside. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you leave your work behind. And it's a burden for women that you actually, for me, it's a personal experience that I want to be in both, but I have to choose if I want to be a better teacher or if I want to be a better mom.
The second question: why we only focus on
One approach. Yeah.
approach? We wanted to narrow it down, and I personally felt very attracted to the feminist approach and how it can have many variables of comparing the 1920s with what is going on right now.
And question, and yes, because actually we learn a lot about feminism throughout this research project. And actually I get mad when girls, especially girls, women, tell me I don't believe in feminism, I'm not a feminist. But actually, because of them, you have all the rights you have now. I mean, you can vote, you are free.
Yes.
And do you know why I think number three is because women were so oppressed, as we read in proto-feminism with Plain and Seller. Women had to use pseudonyms in order to be published. They have to be how to create a main character in order to get published.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Bento, any question?
They kind of answered my question already by answering the first question, but I will still ask and see if they want to expand further on the idea. Girls, how would you feel if you were in the shoes of these two characters that you described? With your modern
Actually,
experience, with
Can
all
I
of the
mention?
differences,
yes.
100 years after, how would you feel being in these women's shoes?
Well, at the beginning of the research, I asked Fernanda to join me. She said yes. And I said to her, okay, you're going to analyze Bliss because you have two kids, you live with your significant other. And I'm going to analyze Miss Brill because I'm single and I don't have any kids. But then we ended up switching
Yeah.
to have a different perspective. What was the end of the question, Miss Bento?
That with your modern experience, living in a world 100 years from the time when these from the setting of these two short stories, how would you feel on these women's shoes?
I will feel frustrated.
Yeah.
But I think if I encounter women like Mansfield or Virginia Woolf, if they were my friends and they taught me how to think and how to observe what was imposed to me, I think I will fight that because that's my personality. And you?
And me too. I will fight for it. It will be a different point of view. As Bertha, the character, she wanted to be free. She didn't want to stay in that marriage. She wanted to go to Miss Fulton, actually.
So the grass is always greener on the other side, huh?
Yes.
Yes,
Of course.
of course.
They usually say that women's violence start with women, and it's something that I have been practicing a lot, how to treat my counterpart. How I, I admit that when I was younger, I will think a woman with 5 kids, my goodness, she doesn't have a TV. But nowadays, I am like, why do I care? How can I help her?
Yeah, that actually expand my thoughts about feminism. That okay, I said, but why are you a housewife? Don't you want to work? Don't you want to do things? And I just keep quiet. It's your choice. It is your choice. You want to be like that, and that's what feminism is about. To respect the other the other women's life
Exactly, and
and opinions
it's
and
your option.
expectations.
Hmm. And thank you for not writing about dystopias. I really don't like reading dystopias.
Okay.
And I've been given dystopias to read. I mean, work about dystopias, but I rather read about these perspectives than dystopias. So, thank you, girls. Mr. Valenzuela.
Very much.
Yes, thank you very much. So I've got just one question. Is about the you in the literature review you talked about Judith Butler's concept of gender performativity. So I would like to know how you see these concepts reflected in some of the characters' behaviors. For example, what behaviors or thoughts. For example, Miss Brill or Bertha as well.
For Berta, gender performativity would be the fact that she has to be happy having a house, a husband, and a baby. What else does she want? She wants to raise her kid on her own. She wants to bond with her kid, but society says, why? You should have a nanny. You don't need to bond with her.
Yeah.
You need to manage your house and be happy with that.
And in the case of Miss Brill, the gender performativity is we don't know if she is single because she wanted to, or she's a widow, or she is an orphan, actually. We don't know her background. And as a single woman, she is expected to get married or to be taken care of or to take care of someone, but she doesn't. And also in here goes the objectification of women
Yes.
because she's old, people doesn't like her. And even in Miss Brill's story, she described older people and she doesn't like them because she doesn't want to see herself in them. She rejects old people. She wants to be with the young.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
you're welcome.
Any other questions from Mr. Aquino, Ms. Bento? No. So what we're going to do now, we will invite everybody, please, to leave this meeting. So we will discuss your presentation to give you a final grade, and we will let you know the candidates when you guys can join the meeting back again.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's just that.
Okay, so Ana Belén, Maria Fernanda, we want to congratulate you for your work. We're very, and of course, to your tutors as well. As a team, you've done a
you.
great job. And so, after discussing with Professor Aquino and Professor Bento, we decided that final mark for this work would be a 4. So, congratulations. You are now our colleagues. So, thank you very much for this time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I'm going to finish in Spanish and then we can continue with the celebration. Esto ha sido la disertación de las estudiantes Ana Cabral y Fernanda González. Culminaron exitosamente y les felicitamos. Muy buenas tardes. All right,
Yeah,
now we can
thank you,
continue with
gracias.
congratulations, girl.
Congratulations,
Finally,
ladies.
you're licenciadas, and we're super
Vamos.
happy with you.
Yay!
It's done,